So welcome to the reading of story time, and today we are doing Funnybones by Janet and Allan Ahlberg. A real classic, one of my favourites, so I love this book. It has also been a television show, so I'm sure some people will enjoy it more maybe from the TV show, or have only ever watched the TV show and haven't had the chance to read the book. So hopefully today you'll either enjoy a well-loved classic or discover something really special. So going to get started, but just want to share once again we're using the lovely bookcase. It lives in my bookcase. The lovely bookmark that my friend made for story time, which is really lovely. So we've been keeping that in here ready. And obviously Pooh Bear's here joining us today. So we're going to get started with Janet and Allan Ahlberg's Funnybones. So we'll share some pictures at the end, like always. This is how the story begins. On a dark, dark hill, there was a dark, dark town. In the dark, dark town, there was a dark, dark street. In the dark, dark street, there was a dark, dark house. In the dark, dark house, there was a dark, dark staircase. Down the dark, dark staircase, there was a dark, dark cellar. And in the dark, dark cellar, some skeletons lived. There was a big skeleton, a little skeleton, and a dog skeleton. One night, the big skeleton sat up in bed. He scratched his skull. "What shall we do tonight?" he said. "Let's take the dog for a walk," said the little skeleton, "and frighten somebody." "Good idea," the big skeleton said. So the big skeleton, the little skeleton, and the dog skeleton left the dark, dark cellar, climbed the dark, dark staircase, and stepped out into the dark, dark street. They walked past the houses and the shops. They walked past the zoo and the police station. They went into the park. The big skeleton scratched his skull. "What shall we do now?" he said. "Let's play on the swings," said the little skeleton, "and throw a stick for the dog, and frighten somebody." "Good idea," the big skeleton said. So the big skeleton, the little skeleton, and the dog skeleton walked round the dark, dark pond, past the dark, dark tennis courts, and up to the dark, dark swings. The big skeleton and the little skeleton played on the swings. They threw a stick for the dog. Suddenly, something happened. The dog skeleton chased the stick, tripped over a park bench, bumped into a tree. And ended up as a little pile of bones. "Look at that," the big skeleton said. "He's all come to pieces. What shall we do now?" "Let's put him together again," the little skeleton said. So the big skeleton and the little skeleton put the dog skeleton together again. They sang a song while they did it. The toe bones connected to the foot bones connected to the leg bones connected to the hip bones connected to the backbone. Then they got mixed up. "Is that a toe bone?" the little skeleton said. "Where does this one go?" said the big skeleton. When they had finished, the big skeleton said, "That dog looks a bit funny to me." "So he does," said the little skeleton. "We've got his tail on the wrong end from his head." "Woof," said the dog skeleton. At last, the dog was properly put back together again. The big skeleton and the little skeleton sang another song. these bones can bark again, can run around in the park again, can frighten people in the dark again." The big skeleton scratched his skull. "That reminds me," he said. "We forgot to frighten somebody." "Let's do it on the way home then," said the little skeleton. "Good idea," the big skeleton said. So the big skeleton, the little skeleton, and the dog skeleton left the dark, dark swings, went out into the dark, dark town, and tried to frighten somebody. I wish we had a nice little boy to frighten. I wish we had a nice old lady. The trouble was, there wasn't anybody. Everybody was in bed. Even the policemen were in the police station were in bed. Even the animals in the zoo, of course, the skeleton animals, were awake. "Let's have a ride on the elephant skeleton," the little skeleton said. "Let's have a word with the parrot skeleton." The big skeleton scratched his head. "Let's keep out of the way of the crocodile skeleton," he said. "Gee up, Nelly." "Good evening, all. Who's a cheeky boy then? Have a cup of tea. Pretty Polly. Put the kettle on, mother." When they were back in the street, and when they could still not find anybody to frighten, the big skeleton said, "What shall we do now?" The little skeleton scratched his skull. "Let's frighten each other," he said. "That's better than nothing." "Good idea," the big skeleton said. So after that, the big skeleton frightened the little skeleton. The little skeleton frightened the big skeleton. The big skeleton and the little skeleton frightened the dog skeleton. And the dog skeleton frightened them. They hid around corners and frightened each other. They climbed up lampposts and frightened each other. They jumped out of dustbins and frightened each other. It looks like they hid in some clothes as well. All the way home. And that is how the story ends. On a dark, dark hill, there was a dark, dark town. In the dark, dark town, there was a dark, dark street. In the dark, dark street, there was a dark, dark house. In the dark, dark house, there was a dark, dark staircase. Down a dark, dark staircase, there was a dark, dark cellar. In the dark, dark cellar, some skeletons lived. And they still do. The end. I think that this is just such a lovely little story that just has so much character in it, considering that they're all just skeletons. It's really fun and it's pretty timeless, to be fair. It has some beautiful illustrations towards the front, which is, only the normal, what you would expect from Janet and Allan Ahlberg. But I'll show you some, because they didn't include anything from the actual storyline. So there's a lovely little title page there, if I just come a little bit closer for you. And then this is beautiful as well, where the skeletons are looking for someone to frighten, and everybody's asleep. And then there's them doing all different positions over here, including the dog skeleton, which is very cute. So I hope you enjoyed that reading. I'm very sorry if my version of the two songs was not the same tune as what your version is, but I think that's what's quite nice about little books like this that have those things, is that it's your interpretation, and it's nice to have that in memory. And if it was, then great. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was in tune. But thank you for listening to the reading and joining me and Pooh Bear of Funnybones by Janet and Allan Ahlberg, one of my all-time favourite books. Got some lovely similar books coming up, and obviously thank you to Katie again for making our Once Upon a Time bookmark that lives in the bookcase for our Storytime books. And thank you again to our friend Em, who also sent us Pooh Bear's mug, which is really nice, which sits up there with our tea ready. But thank you for joining for the live reading of the book. I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope that you all have a copy for your own libraries, and I highly recommend it. It's a lovely thing to have and to share. And we'll see you again for the next story time. Thank you. Bye. Say bye, Pooh. Bye.